Hi, my name is John Angelina. At the time of this recording, I'm 65 years old. I've been a pastor now for almost 40 years, and I come out of a background of playing rock and roll in the United States. I live in Germany, and a lot of times people say, how did you go from the United States, being a musician, into ministry? How did all this happen? Well, this is my story. I was born in a place called Providence, Rhode Island. My family lived in an Italian neighborhood called Federal Hill. And I was born in 1954. I had two older sisters. I was the youngest. So being the only son and being the youngest, I was the king of the house. I have very happy memories of growing up, living in Providence, and then we moved to another city called Cranston, then in my teenage years in Johnston. My whole time with my family, lots of cousins, lots of aunts and uncles, every weekend getting together. If you've ever seen the movie The Godfather or The Goodfellas in those younger years, you can imagine how it was growing up. But something happened when I was 8 years old that changed my life forever. There was a movie about a drummer named Gene Krupa, and watching that story, I mean, he was the first drummer that took the drums from back out of the band where just it was part of the rhythm section into being a major instrument. And watching that movie, something touched my soul. I knew I wanted to play music. Right after that, I woke up my mother and I said, I need to go learn how to play drums. She said, you're not playing drums, it's too loud. She said, but if you're serious about music, I have a cousin. His name is Ray Paul. His actual name was Ray Piola, but he changed it to Ray Paul. He was a great jazz guitar player, but unfortunately in his early 20s, he started to go blind, and it kind of destroyed his career. So he started teaching. And the time I met him, he must have been in his mid to late 30s. My parents took me to him, and he said, if you're serious, you should start when you're 9 years old. So I waited almost a whole year, and on my 9th birthday, we went for my first guitar lesson. And he would give you a grade every week. He'd give you a VG for very good, a V for good, a G for good, or a P for poor. My dad said to me, listen, we're going to rent you a guitar and see if you really want to do this. But if you get a VG every week, I'll buy you your own guitar for your 10th birthday. Well, I worked really hard, and every single week I got a VG. And then the next thing happened that really touched me. It was in February of 1964. Like most people my age, we were watching the Ed Sullivan Show. The Beatles came on for the first time, and then I knew this is definitely what I want to do. So for my 10th birthday in 1964, my dad bought me a Gretsch double pickup Golden Sunburst anniversary model guitar. It was such a fantastic guitar. I wish I still had that guitar today. Me, the stoop. I ended up selling it somewhere along the line. But it was a great guitar. And I started to play music. And by the time I was 12, I got invited to play with a bunch of older guys. They must have been 30 or 40. They felt like they were 100 years old for me. And we would do weddings, and I would play what we called back then standards, Blue Moon and Girl from Ipanema. And I'd make money on a weekend being 12 years old. But then I got into junior high school. And when you get into junior high school and you turn 13, you notice there's girls, and you find out, wait a minute, with rock and roll, you're much more attractive to the girls. So I started playing rock and roll instead of the standards, and someone asked me to be in a band, and they decided to name the band Little Johnny and the Sheiks. Guess who was Little Johnny? It was me. And the guy that would get the gigs for us, we play in high school dances and in church events, where they did a dance for teenagers. He was a disc jockey on a local radio station called WPRO. It's, I think, WPRI today, but back then it was WPRO. And he would put us in his car, drive us to a gig, and Little Johnny and the Sheiks, we would play, and we would do songs like Louie Louie and Johnny Be Good, and I would be there with my guitar, and it was kind of a novelty because my guitar was almost as big as I was. And as I got older and as I went into high school, we had a high school band. That band was called Cotillion. And that band played all over and all the different dances and all the events. We played any place we could play. My mother kept every newspaper clipping of every place we ever played. I found it years later. I was surprised she kept it all. And sometimes they'd have an article about the band in the paper. I remember one article about us playing on a boat going through Narragansett Bay. And they said, "Cotillion rocks the bay." And we thought that was very cool. Well, as I approach coming to the end of my high school years, our band expanded. We decided to change the name. We called it the Maui Fisher Band. Now we're almost 18 years old, and some of us are already 18. We're starting to do clubs. Even though legally you couldn't be in a club until you were 21, we'd kind of go in and never leave the stage. We were playing places like the Warehouse or the Jail, and bands like Alice Cooper and Deep Purple were coming into the same kind of clubs. And I really knew this is what I want to do with my life. Then something happened. Our lead singer, Jackie, he got drafted. This is the time at the end of the Vietnam War, and we're all afraid of being drafted. I got very lucky. The draft ended right in the month where my 18th birthday came. On May 1st, the draft ended in 1972. 20 days later, I turned 18 and would have been eligible for the draft. But that was the end of the Maui Fisher Band, and that was the decision for me then. I need to leave this little town. If I want to play professionally, I got to go someplace where it's happening.